Bah, humbug. How hard can it be to wrap your pincers around the grip of one of those? If that's you, you better shut your mouth and listen. In some cases, sure, it is that simple, like this bronze sword. There's really only one way to grip it, like a hammer, to hit the nail on the head. An arming sword, you can hold like this too, but you might not want to. Why? Couple of reasons. For one, if I'm holding it like this, I cannot reach the lens of the camera, right? If I'm gripping it like this on a handshake grip, oh, look at that, I can. Hi there. Also, we all know how important good thrusting technique is. And if you hold it stiffly, like a hammer, it's pretty limited how you can thrust effectively. Whereas tilting it forward, much easier to thrust like that. And even more so, if you put a finger over the guard, because this aligns it more naturally. And this is probably what led to the development of rapiers, because first we see an additional ring that comes off the guard that keeps this finger safe, which is awfully exposed on a sword like this. I really have to wonder why they even considered that worth it with earlier medieval swords. A gauntlet wouldn't really help you, because it would have to be a fingered gauntlet to be able to even do this to begin with, which are not as strong as clamshell gauntlets. And just imagine you receive a cut or a strike with any kind of weapon on this finger. Even with a gauntlet, it gets broken because it gets crushed between the guard and the gauntlet and the weapon. Then we see more and more parts added until we end up with a complex hilt like this, where suddenly this finger is not exposed at all anymore and you can thrust to your heart's content. And then the Spanish come along and ask, yeah, but what if we want to thrust even better? Give it a cup. Why? Because it gives you more protection when you're doing this. This might be hard to see. There, so 2 fingers over the guard instead of 1, which also has the effect of bringing more of the hand under the cup to be protected by it. And when I put 1 finger over, a lot of my hand is outside of the cup. This, much more is inside. Why would you do that? Because now the blade is even more aligned with your arm. So, comparison. Hammer grip, garbage. Not very well aligned. 1 finger over the guard, better. 2 fingers, even better. So now it really becomes a natural extension of your arm. The downside is cutting is really awkward now, as is parrying. Basically the opposite is this basket hilt broadsword. Not so broad because this one's designed for safe sparring, but the basket here gives you the protection you need for comfortable, safe, tip-up parries with a hammer grip. This is what's called the St. George's parry in Highland broadsword. As you can see, without that guard, the hand would be pretty exposed, but this is quite strong. So you can receive even a powerful cut on the blade and not risk having it collapse. So for clarity, this. As you can imagine, if you only have a cross guard and not a complex hilt, you don't really want to do this, right? But also for another reason, because this is now weaker. If you try this out, if you have somebody push on the blade and you hold it with a hammer grip, you let them push in the same spot, and then you put your index finger over, you may notice that this is weaker. What I can also tell you from sparring is if you put a finger over the guard and you parry like this, it hurts. It smacks your finger because it transfers the vibrations into the guard and your finger, particularly when trying to defend against a longsword cut with 1 hand. You can do it, but it hurts. Even with a regular handshake grip without the finger over the guard, you can feel that it's weaker in a static block. The deflectional parry is a different story. If instead of stop the opponent's blade, you want to redirect it and allow it to slide off your blade in some kind of way and then counter, it's fine. But if you want to actually stop it, then this is much stronger, particularly if you tense your fingers upon impact. What that tells you, once again, is the good old, it depends. You know what also depends? My channel on your support. More than ever in times when YouTube ad revenue is in the latrine. And by becoming a patron or member, you get extra stuff too, so win-win. Not only is there no single best way to hold a sword, depends on the sword, but also even with the same sword, they might switch between different grips in a fight. So essentially, fingering is for finesse and control, fisting is... you get the idea. I'm starting to think the gloves were a bad idea. I was thinking they would contrast well with the swords, but because I'm also wearing black, they don't stand out that well, do they? All right, time for my pasty white hands to shine. Sometimes you might want to switch just momentarily. So say I'm holding the sword in a handshake grip and now I want to perform a static block on my left side. This is stronger than this. One more type of grip and then we'll talk about hand position on the handle. The final type is the thumb grip. That's useful for particular techniques, either with the true edge or the false edge. So if I want to perform what's called a sword cut, which is with, in this case, with the true edge to your right opening, I would switch first to a thumb grip like this. So instead of it being aligned like this, knuckles of the fingers are forward and the guard points in the same direction, it becomes like this. So now the guard is perpendicular to where your knuckles are pointing. It's also a way to block with a flat, particularly with a messer that has this additional guard here. So what you do now is you block like this, and that guard is here in case the blade slides down, or even to deliberately catch it on here. This way you can brace the blade with a thumb to give it some extra structure and resist better. I would not do this for a deflectional parry because you might end up overextending the thumb, but either on this side or on that side works quite well. The thumb grip is also commonly used with a parrying dagger. Why? Because this way the quillons are properly aligned to catch the opponent's blade. Holding it here works well with a sword because then you're parrying with the blade. This doesn't have enough mass, so you have to parry with where you have the most mass so it doesn't just blow right through. By opposing the enemy blade with your flat, you make sure to funnel it into the quillons, and now you can kind of lock it in to then attack with your main weapon. It's not that this doesn't work, but you can see with this particular dagger here, the hand is still exposed. Here, I'm good. There are other options as well, like thumb grip with a finger over the quillon, or thumb on the back of the handle with messer or saber, for example. But broadly speaking, those are either variations or combinations of hammer grip, handshake grip, or thumb grip. All right, hand position. If the grip is long enough, you might not want to jam the hand all the way up against the guard, at least if it's a simple guard, because there are some situations where the opponent's blade might be able to reach just over top and get your knuckles. Whereas if you're further down, less risk. Which of course with a handshake grip you end up doing anyway unless you put the finger over the guard. If you jam both of your hands up here with a hammer grip, this is what you often see in the hands of untrained people. So they just grip it like a baseball bat and just go, ugh, which is horrible. The purpose of the handshake grip is not only better thrusts and tip control, but also better cut. Long-reaching cut, I should say. You can perform a good cut with a hammer grip. It's often used with more strongly curved blades, but it doesn't reach as far as the handshake grip does. You can relax the bottom fingers and tighten them when you cut. This gives you a good snap. This is much more effective than simply this. It's this too, but combined with tightening the fingers like this, which also helps really deliver the force effectively because the fingers are supposed to tighten on impact. The same way as in boxing and other martial arts, where you're supposed to be loose as you throw the punch, but then tighten at the moment of impact. Same thing here. And by using a handshake grip, they're automatically further apart than they would be with two rigid hammer grips, right? So you already can't cram it like this. There already needs to be a bit more space. So some people say you need to grip as low as you can to have the hands really far apart. Doing that has pros and cons. So by putting the hands further apart, you have more leverage here in the hilt. So you can move the sword a little bit faster, right? So if I try to twitch this as fast as possible, that's how it works, like this. If I do it here, I don't know if you can see the difference on camera, but this is easier. In case of this Kriegsmesser or war knife, it doesn't matter a whole lot because the handle isn't terribly long. This is a different story. That's a much longer handle. So, as I said, this is still nice and responsive, quick to move around, but I can tell that I'm losing some power and control over the edge here. So in this case, I find it noticeably more effective to grip just a little bit higher, not all the way at the end. You give up a little bit of responsiveness for more velocity and better edge alignment. This is rarely seen, but there is also the option to move the main hand further down. What that does is it delivers a more powerful strike at the expense of responsiveness. It's going to feel more sluggish. At the extreme, you can even let go with the main hand completely and just throw out the cut with the offhand. So that sacrifices control for reach. Afterwards, we have to bring it around and try to grip it again, or just straight up slam it in the ground and pull it back up before they can evade and rush in. So high risk, high reward. Finally, there's the case of a very short blade with a long handle proportionally. Gripping this with the hands as far apart as they go is really not great. It actually feels weaker than with one hand. When I tested this cleaver and other similarly proportioned weapons, particularly for hard chopping tests, it is noticeably less effective to hold it that far apart. There are more extreme cases with even longer handles, also longer blades, but you're actually better off gripping it lower to get more power out of it, or if you want a bit more agility. So the tricky thing is the ideal hand position depends on the sword, on its proportions and mass distribution. Two swords may even look pretty similar, but may have slightly different ideal hand positions. And ideal is already a simplification because you can sort of tweak the stats of the sword, if you will, depending on how you use it. You can emphasize either speed and agility or power. Anyway, hope you found this interesting. Did I earn my thumb up and subscribe and all that bullshit? It helps. Anyway, thanks for watching. Check out my Patreon page as well down below. A deflectional story is a different parry. I got this. I can do words, potentially overextend your wrist, but wrist? Words are hard. You know, how am I supposed to distinguish between a thumb and a wrist?